Good. Thank you. So do you have any questions, anything you want to talk about before we go home? Yes, Erica. Okay, we'll give you some time.
So I thought that's what I'm asking. So you remind me what kind of questions you.
You're 29. Do you ever stand in front of a mirror and just ask what happened? Never? Do you ever ask in front of anyone and ask what happened? That you were once 18, all of a sudden you're 29, sitting amongst, never ask? I can't help you then. I was sitting quietly in my office, there's a knock. I open the door, it's someone. And he starts talking about his car. I'm saying, why did I open the door? That's a good question. It was filled with rage and disgust that my time is being just eaten by some. So that's how you ask questions. Lots of pain and disgust. Yes.
With the tariffs being put in place, what are some recommendations you have for
I think you should read Charles Darwin a little bit. Regardless of how difficult situations may be, we are the sort of animals that are able to adapt, adjust the best we can. All of us struggle, It's a good time to make up with your parents. If you're angry with them, call them and just say, hey, you know what, Dad, I'm sorry. And move in with them. Let them take care of you. Yeah. Anyone else? Rosalind. Forgive my analogy. It's just the way. Imagine that you and I are companions, and life is just tough. No one really expects to struggle and be hurt and cause pain in any relationship, but that's just what we do. First, you have to carry your own confusion, then you have to carry your companion's confusion, then he has to carry the pain you're going through, then you have to carry the pain he's going through, and then both of you have no choice but to express your pains, and then both of you have to figure out what to do with all the stuff on the table now. So it becomes very, very complicated. And so, initially everything is fine, but as you and I grow more comfortably with one another, things begin to smell a little. Then I become invisible to you, you become invisible to me. I scream, I shout, you do the same thing. And I feel profoundly alone in the relationship, as do you. And we begin to abuse each other, in all sorts of ways. It doesn't have to be physical, I just don't have to look at you as much, and I don't have to sleep in the same bed. And so every time I come home, I become like an alarm clock that reminds you that your life is being wasted, that you don't love, you used to, but you no longer do, that you signed up for this to be happy, but you're not. And so again, every time you see me, you have all this, negative emotions just rushing through. You can, go to Barnes and Nobles and check out or buy a book on Stoicism. You can read a book, the Bible, how to forgive, how to exercise compassion, generosity. But you're not there yet. These are like emotions that you need to apply down here, and you need a lot of tools. You don't have them just yet. And so what will happen is you're going to memorize a lot of quotes from Seneca, Epictetus, these are Stoic philosophers, and you want to apply them in our relationship. But it won't work because you have to deal with the conflict that is caused by the relationship, and then you have to take a few steps back, remember what Seneca told you, and then you have to push your emotion down, bring the statement up front, and somehow try to apply it. It's just too many things, it's like your mom dies, then your dad dies, then your pet died, then your brother died, then someone steals your car, and then it's just too much. So what you can do is just, you and I can sit, and then you can tell me that this is not working out, that you need some time to yourself, you pack up your stuff and you leave. I don't know if it's going to work out, I don't know if you're going to come back, but you leave. And then time passes, a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, who knows how long people take to recover from these things. And I run into you accidentally by the lake. And you don't feel anything about me. There is no anger, no positive, you're just completely indifferent. Somehow you have been able to kind of recover in this 5 year of not being around me. Maybe you were not ready to be in a relationship. Maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe we were just not compatible. Lots of different issues. But you've learned how to be on your own, be alone, be relatively okay. And then you don't need to read Seneca. You don't need to read Epictetus or Epicurus, any of those people, because your life doesn't need managing. There are no negative emotions consuming you, harassing you. Now, when you run into me, you say, Amir, would you like to have a cup of coffee? I say, sure. And we go, maybe we're holding hands, but you're not feeling agitated, irritated, frustrated. Maybe an inkling of fear that this may be a mistake, but for the most part, you're okay because I have no power over you. You're not looking to be in a relationship with me. So it's kind of like what we do in therapy. You don't like your father, or he's done something wrong, or you've done something wrong. You walk away from the relationship and you think that you're going to overcome the experience, but no one can. Once it becomes part of your psyche, your soul, it's just part of who and what you are. And so the idea of continuing to stay with your father in hopes of fixing the relationship, it's just too much, So you have to wait till for the dust to settle. And so you do therapy, for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Then, I don't know, you call your dad and say, hey, let's have a cup of coffee. But now you have the tools to deal with the emotions. So if you live, in a storm, don't go out there, because they'll just make a mess of you and your life. Go into the basement somewhere, just rest there for a number of weeks or months or days till you are able to get your footing back. And then once you have some tools, then go back up there. Do you like boxing? Well, you should YouTube some boxing, like people get knocked down and they don't want to be completely out, so they get up. And the first thing they do is they hug the person who knocked them down. I mean, you think like they're going to make out in the middle of the canvas, but that's not really the case. They just don't want to get beat up. They're like locking their arms and everything. And it's a way for them to kind of get rid of some of the emotions that are running inside them, their confusion. And once they've sobered up, they can fight again. And I think life is very much like that. If you happen to be unfortunate, finding yourself in circumstances where your life is just turned upside down, you can't really do much. It's finished. You have to go somewhere, wait for the dust to settle, the wind to stop, and then you can go back in there. Yeah. You know, it's the advice that your mom gives you whenever you have a fight with your boyfriend. You know. Whenever you're angry, just go for a walk. Because when you open your mouth in anger and say things, you know, words are like arrows leaving the bow. Once they leave, you can't take them back. And in anger, we say a lot of things. Yeah, so. You just got in.
Yeah, I have a question regarding what you just said.
I'm sorry, yes.
When people are like, I didn't mean to say that, I was just really angry. What is that? Is that a significant?
Say again?
When people say that they didn't mean something, they just said it because they were really angry. Is that like a significant thing that should mean something to you, or is that just?
Well, it has taken us a long, long time to be able to be dishonest in relationships. And by that, I mean be political, you know. So you're able to kind of like your parents are coming and your house is a mess. So just shove everything in the closet and you lock the door, making sure no one opens up. That's what we do in relationships. Whether it's in this class where you don't like me, but you keep your mouth shut. So in all relationships, what we do is we see a lot of negative things we don't really like, but we have learned how to keep things down. Now, there comes a point where we hope these things don't usually happen, but they often do, where all the ways you've been socialized and all the way you've been politicized, that you become domesticated, okay? That you push everything down and make sure your companion doesn't see it. In moments of anger, the gates open. You know, unless you happen to be profoundly reflective, profoundly aware and mindful, which is not for us. If you happen to be a very, very advanced human being, then possibly you can do those things. So what happens in moments of anger, 5,000 years of culture that has been able to domesticate human beings, it all goes away. You know, consider someone who's been bullied in school from, say, grade 1 all the way to grade like 10. You know, you have suffered like 5 or 6 or 10 years of being bullied. And your mom takes you to church, your mom takes you to therapy, you do maybe drugs, maybe you do alcohol, maybe you do porn, maybe you go into the boxing ring. At a certain point, your trash bin gets full. How or when that happens, I don't know, because all of us have different capacities and different resources. At a certain point, you realize that it's just too much. And you want to self-harm. But before you self-harm, you say, I want to other harm first. So you go somewhere, you grab a gun, you know, you go on top of a tower and you begin shooting. What we have in schools, you know. And you have to ask yourself, well, this 18-year-old kid, how come all of a sudden he just went bust? Well, it took about 10 years for everything in his life, all the people in his life, God, politics, media, drugs, to no longer have any power over him, where he just becomes unraveled. So what happens in moments of anger, you become profoundly honest. And we survive life because we are deceitful, and we do it for good reasons. You know, you want a grade. So you come to class and you play with your phone or you daydream. You want a grade, so you chat GPT your essay. You want a grade, so you raise your hand and you ask a ridiculous question. And these are the things we do when we want to survive. Now, it may be that you come to class and I keep harassing you. And the more I harass you, the less you care about your grade, the less you care about your future, and you just look at me, you stand up and you say, you're a fucking idiot. I'm going to complain. Now, for the past 10 weeks, you've been domesticated well. You've been civilized. You've been relatively decent and respectful. But as I keep poking and poking and poking, there comes a point where you say, I can't do this anymore. And 10 weeks of holding your negative emotions in, you can no longer do it. So the gates of hell opens up and you say all so nasty things to me. Now, I, on the receiving end, hearing your honesty, that you've never loved me, you have sex not because you want to, but because it's a gift that you give me grudgingly, right? And I hate hearing those things, but they're true. Now, the nice thing about hearing is that, yes, it hurts me, it disrupts our relationship, but my organism has the power to forget. Just give me 2 weeks. I can only be angry at you for so long. I can only be sad and depressed for so long. I can only think about leaving the relationship for so long. Eventually, I'll calm down. You'll buy me some flowers. Of course, that's a nice thing about guilt and shame and repentance, because they drive you to some flower shop or some cemetery. You'll steal some flowers. You make some cake. And you take me out to some place and we eat. Initially, I'm angry. I don't want to look at you, talk to you. And you ask me, how's the food? Sucks. How are the flowers? Suck. How's life? Awful. And little by little, I kind of just warm up to you. And then we go home, and then we make up, make out, and then slowly we forget. Danielle.
Can I record this?
Can you what?
Can I record the conversation?
Yeah.
What is the point of suffering?
Well, there are different kinds of sufferings. So let me, and forgive me if this is a repeat, but I do it not so much for you, but for me. There is a kind of pain and suffering that comes with your physical body. You have a flu, and it creates emotions about you, and those emotions are negative. So not only are you suffering physically, but emotionally you also don't want to be around. Emotionally, you begin to ask some questions. Why you're in this relationship, for example, or why you're wasting your life on taking ridiculous classes, because for the first time you begin to understand the value of health, of time, of being young, and just being, rich in youth. There are moments where your physical body is healthy, but you live in an environment, it's a physical space that creates unhealthy emotions that impacts your physical body. In other words, you go home and your mom is a drunk, and that impacts you. Or your father is loud and is obnoxious and is mean-spirited. And so these are people you care for, these are people you want to have put your faith in, trust, but you realize they don't really much care about you, and that emotionally impacts you. And so even though physically you want to go for a walk, the emotions have sucked all the energy out of your physical body. So you just go into your room, you sit on your bed, you just play video games for the next 10 hours, okay? Sometimes you suffer because of psychological reasons. By the time you have psychological pain, it means that one of the things about physical and emotional is that you can have a flu, but if you're patient enough, after a week, you'll regain your health. If you come to this class and I bully you and you have all these negative emotions, just wait for a couple of hours. The emotions will go. All you need to do is, after class, pick up your phone, talk to your friends about what a jerk I am. And once that is vented, expressed, you're going to feel light. It's like going to church and crying. And you walk out of the church kind of being light a little, okay? Now, when it hits your psychology, it means that there is an event that kind of has gone inside you. It has moved through your physical body into your emotions and has found a nice little place inside your psychology. It becomes part of who and what you are. I am Persian. My culture is the Persian culture. Those first 11 years when I lived in my country, that is my slab. And that slab is never going to get cracked. And as I age, I become more Persian. So that becomes my psychology. My taste buds, they are psychological. I mainly enjoy Persian food. Okay? And the poetry, Persian. Music, Persian. Language, Persian. So once it hits your psychology, it's part of who and what you are. So when people have traumas, you can't forget trauma. What trauma does, it goes inside you, stays inside you. You will do whatever you can to forget. But once in a while, it comes up and reminds you that in as much as you've been very, very cunning in trying to forget what the event that took place like 10 years ago, it's still here and it's still unresolved and it's still going to like turn your life upside down. Okay. Then there are some suffering that comes with your intellect. In other words, you look yourself in the mirror and you say, and let's just say you happen to be in a relationship. And you begin to think about your relationship, whether it's positive, negative, whether it benefits you in the long run or not. And then you begin to think. As you begin to think, you realize you're beginning to have more negative emotions. And physically, you are repulsed by seeing your companion. Or it may be the other way around, okay? And so what you realize is you keep thinking about the relationship. And it kind of puts you in a foul mood. Your friends are there. They want to have a good time with you. But your relationship is right there, front and center. And then there is a kind of suffering that comes with the spiritual crisis, where you look at your physical life, your emotional life, all the beliefs you hold, all the traumas you hold, your intellectual life, all the experiences you've had, and all the books you've read, all the classes you've taken, all the degrees you have, and you realize they don't amount to anything. You know, and once you hit the spiritual crisis, it's like this vacuum cleaner. I don't know if you have a Dyson at home. These vacuum cleaners, they just like suck everything. Your sofas, your tables, your chairs, and you look at your room and there is nothing left. And you have nothing to sit on, and the floor is cold. And so there's a spiritual suffering in the sense that you and I struggle to make a relatively healthy life for the first 40 years of our lives. You know, you go to school, you buy a car, you buy a house, you buy a husband or a wife and kids, you go to your parents, you pay your taxes, you go to church. One day you wake up and you realize none of those things mean anything for you. And you kind of walk away from the whole thing, including your family. Now, the nature of suffering at its very core is that it disrupts the smooth flow of your life. It's painful. And there are degrees, okay? Now, what all sufferings have in common, whether it's spiritual, intellectual, psychological, emotional, or physical, is that they disrupt your life, okay? Now, while you are suffering, there isn't much you can do. There is a kind of suffering that is imposed upon you by life, okay? There is another kind of suffering that's imposed upon you by me being your father. I know you like to go out there and drink and smoke and play soccer with your friends. But I also know that you have some musical talents, i.e. piano. So what I'll do is I'll walk into your life, disrupt your relationship with your friends, with soccer, with your kinds of entertainment or pleasure, and I push you to sit and play the piano. Now, while you're suffering, you're going to badmouth me, you're going to hate me, you're going to dislike me. But I also know that you happen to be very sentimental, you're emotional, what you're going through right now, you don't really understand. But if I was to continue imposing this upon you, in 10 years' time, you will use piano instead of going out in the streets and fighting. You will use piano to express some of the difficulties in life instead of smoking or drinking. You will know how to use your depression well by creating your own kind of music. Okay? So the sort of suffering I'm imposing upon you is what they call conscious suffering. I know why I am deliberately causing you pain. Now, most of us, we're not that proficient. We just walk into life, life craps on all of us, and then we have no idea what to do with all the pain or misery that lives inside us, but we manage the best we can. Sometimes you say to yourself, let's say I am your dad, I am your brother, I'm your wife, that you realize that you have entered a certain place in your own maturity where you say, you're willing to make some sacrifices. You want to become more of a patient man. You want to be more generous. You want to be more giving. You want to know how to deal with anger in a different way. And so, I have cancer. So what you do is you make a promise to yourself that in as much as you don't really like me and you like to spend your time in a different way, more beneficial to you, you say to yourself, Danielle, you too will one day get 60. I was standing outside looking at this old man with a cane walking up the stairs. And he was having such a difficult time. And I am at an age now where I kind of look at these things and I try to put myself in those spaces intellectually that in a few years, if I survive, I too will either be on a wheelchair or have a cane or a walker, one of those things. So you say to yourself that I am 19, life spares no one, death is waiting for all of us, so is sickness. Why don't I start my training right now instead of waiting for me to get sick, instead of waiting for cancer to knock on my door, instead of old age? Let me go embrace them now. So, though you may want to sit and watch TV, you say, well, Amir is sick. I know he hasn't called for me, but maybe I should go sit next to him, maybe massage his feet, maybe make him tea, making soup. And all of a sudden, two things happen inside you. There's a part of you that says, mind your own business, just sit and watch a good movie for 2 hours. The other part says, don't forget, you will get old. Time is short. Start your training now. And so you deliberately put yourself in environments where you cause your own suffering, but you do so because you have the patience for it, you have the stamina for it. Your skin is thick enough to be scarred, and you're okay with being scarred. I mean, it's one of the things that I think the culture used to train people. No one gets trained to be married, no one gets trained to have children. But what you have is you live in a culture where you see everyone married and you see everyone having kids, so that's what you do. And so you get married. And you also live in a culture where they tell you that you don't get married to be happy because marriage doesn't cause happiness. You just have a companion, who craps all over you on a daily basis. Then you have kids, and they crap all over you on a daily basis. But the culture has given you stories where everybody makes your life miserable, but your skin is thick. You can handle it. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is the following. There are different kinds of suffering, but most importantly, suffering can come in two ways. Either life gives it to you, or you fall in love with someone and they tell you why they're going to make you suffer. And every time you kind of break, they come to you, they hold you, they pamper you, they feed you. And once you're put back together, They give you some fun things, then after a few hours, the imposition begins again. It's no different than learning martial arts. It's no different than learning how to play the piano. I mean, there's so many different things that you have to do, and it's a struggle. The other thing you need to understand is you're not going to allow anyone to cause you suffering if you don't like them and if you don't love them. If this was like a teacher-student relationship, I would say all nasty things about you to your face. But because love creates fear, love creates respect, love creates dominance, love creates dependency, you know that if you say anything disrespectful to me, that umbilical cord that is connected from me to you, once I cut it, you'll be abandoned and you'll have no one. And because you have put your faith in me, you know, I mean, you don't really know, but it's only I who knows, that even though you're hurt, there is no other place for you to go except my house again. So you're not going to allow anyone to cause you suffering unless you trust them and have faith in them. And that's very, very, very rare. Yeah. Yeah.
So, is it mentor's job is to bring about?
I'm sorry, you know, you're going to get married one of these days. I hope not, but you will. If you were to look at marriage as a self-refining process, you'll probably do okay. If you were going to get married, and by self-refining, I mean the following. That marriage is going to make your life dirty. It's like having kids and they're going to throw all these toys around. You have to watch the way you speak to your kids. You have to make sure you don't scream too much at them, because if you constantly scream, you'll have kids who will have a good amount of fear inside them, and they will be raised with fear. And when they have a job, they will never stand up for their rights because they're fearful of being screamed at by their boss or by their teachers. Okay. If, on the other hand, you were to walk into a relationship knowing full well that this person is going to make a mess of your life, and your task is to always hold your tongue, be mindful, be aware, and your task is to forever remain generous, and if you want to be angry for the right reasons. Make sure you just don't react. Now that's a good relationship to be in. It's baptism through fire. Life doesn't care for you. Life doesn't care for you. Find someone who cares for you and then have them crap on you. You'll survive. Yeah.
I was going to ask if the goal of a mentor is to bring about this sort of managed suffering. Is it easier or more difficult for that figure to be a parent, as the parent might love you too much to?
Yeah, parents are no good. Parents are there only really to give you some food, shelter, and clothing. That's all they can do. I mean, unless you happen to be a very, very, very detached parent. Mothers can't do that too well, but fathers can. I mean, fathers by their very nature, they're a little weird. It takes a while for the kids to gravitate towards the man, the father. You know, so fathers have more of a say in the way of disciplining the kids. I mean, so do mothers. But fathers have an easier time of disciplining a little bit. But because they're too close, and because their worry is about your future, you know, and your future is not so much about learning what philosophy is, just passing the goddamn class. A mentor will do whatever he or she possibly can for you to understand what philosophy is. You know, you don't want your son coming home saying, "So Dad, why did you have sex with Mom? Why did you guys want to have children? Do you really think you're qualified as parents?" I mean, parents are not really equipped for those questions, but mentors are. They're a bit more detached, they're a bit more objective, you know. So, yeah, always remember the saying in the Gospel of Luke that a prophet is never welcome in his own town. Parents are like that. You know, kids don't really receive advice well from their own parents, but the same advice given to them by a friend, you know, by a stranger in a classroom, like someone like me, they'll go home and say, Dad, my teacher told me A, B, C, D. And your dad looks at you and says, what are you, stupid? I've been telling you this for the past like 25 years. What's wrong with you? So, yeah.
So my question is, could one who apologized take back their apology after finding out the other the instance that made them apologize?
So, like, I apologize to you, and then I discover something about you, and then I come to you and say, by the way, Elise, I take my apology back. Yeah?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking about.
What would that matter?
Well, I don't know. I just thought if it's like possible for him to do that, or if he should do that.
I think once you understand something, I mean, really understand it, the emotions that are usually attached to something when you lack the understanding is just no longer there. I'm going to apologize to you as long as I care for you. If I come to a place where my care and respect for you disappear, you know, you may be waiting for an apology, and you can wait for the next 10 years. It's not going to come your way because I don't really care what you think and how you feel. In relationships, you often apologize for all the wrong reasons. I mean, you do it to survive the relationship, but you have to do it. You pay lip service. You know, I apologize for having married you. I apologize for having you. You're a mistake as a child, but it's okay. I apologize. You have no choice but to suffer for the next like 70, 80 years. It doesn't really do much, but. Forgive my answers being so short. It's been like a week since I've talked. Anyone else? Yeah, Erica.
So how can we use trauma or having someone with trauma as a catalyst for change without glorifying the pain or invalidating the experience?
Look, the pain has to go away until you gain some sobriety. It's like saying, if you look at pain as consuming a lot of alcohol and you're just drunk and you're puking, while you're drunk, intoxicated, and while you're puking, it's very difficult to kind of have a space inside that says, I want to figure out what sobriety looks like. You're just in too much pain and you're just too drunk, you're too confused. You know, you're too intoxicated to have any sobriety about you, rationality about you. So what happens is you begin to puke. And as you're puking, what you have is the pain of throwing up becomes so much, and you're still drunk, you know, but while you're puking, there's a part of you that says that, like a butcher that cuts the fat from the meat, while you're puking, there's a part of you that is cut from this part that's intoxicated. That says, how could I have been so stupid? Okay. Now, you're going to drive yourself home. Hopefully someone else will. You'll puke some more. You'll pee in your bed. You'll wake up with a headache and you look bad, smell bad, taste bad. You'll kind of be sad and depressed. And then after a few days, you'll shower. And then your mom is going to call you and say, where have you been? And let's just say you and your mom talk about all sorts of things, and you say, Mom, I did something really, really stupid. And we're not very honest with ourselves, oftentimes. And you say, yeah, I went out with these loser of friends. For the first time, you call them losers. We went to this club, the hellhole. I wasted all this money I'm drinking. Now you find yourself to be very much like the prodigal son. That you spend your energy, you spend your money, you spend your ability to laugh with all the wrong people and to be happy and to gain pleasure again with all the wrong people through all the wrong means. And so your mom becomes like a church. You whisper into her ears and she just sits back and listens like God. And as you're expressing something about it, it just lightens up. And then you make yourself some promises, which is, I'm never going to call those friends again. I'm never going to drink again. I'm not going to waste my money on those things again. Now that becomes moments of reflection. And you can, and that's because the pain has subsided. And what you're suffering from now is the emotional guilt. Okay? And now reflection kicks in, and now you make plans. As so next time you want to have fun, you're going to have fun in this other way. Maybe you'll find a different set of friends. You'll go hiking. And you'll make sandwiches, while you're on top of the Everest. Now, the problem with making such promises is that something about you has to become extremely localized in the promise you had made. In other words, it's not enough for you to come to this class and find the conversations interesting or even inspiring. It's not enough. You will forget. Those moments of inspiration need to be reinforced over and over and over and over again, because this class competes with your math class, with your geography class, with your daughter, with your boyfriend, with your job, with the fact that you're like a 35-year-old woman or a man and you have all these other stuff going on. So there are too many things coming your way. And this class is like a tiny little seed. It doesn't really stand the chance to survive for that long. But what will happen is, if you were to come to this class more often, if you were to come to other classes more often, if you were to read books revolving around these ideas, and then coming to the house more often, texting me more often, emailing me more often, what will happen is the core values or the core aspects of thinking, reflecting of these classes, okay, all of a sudden you realize you think about relationships that are connected to this class. You think about raising your daughter connected to this class. Okay? And all of a sudden this class becomes the very center, the hub of everything that you do. Okay? So that's the thing about promises. That even though you make some promises in moments of shame and regret and repentance, those promises eventually are forgotten because life is just too busy. So trauma is an event. It creates a lot of pain. You get drunk with pain. Then you get drunk with anger. Then you get drunk with rage. Then you get drunk with justice, i.e. vengeance. Okay? And then you get drunk with depression. Then you get drunk with isolation and loneliness. Then you just get drunk in a world of negativity, which is all okay. Okay? Now, while you're drunk, it's very difficult for you to learn anything from it, to understand anything from it. Understanding anything means the following. You're drunk. Intoxication goes away, and now you're detached from pain. In other words, you have gained some health. In health, now you can look at this other part of you, and then like a rat, you dissect it. You begin to study the parts. If I am your boyfriend and you love me, but I get drunk every night and I get high every night and I waste our money on all the awful things, while you're drunk with love, you're going to stay with me. But as your parents become more concerned for you and for our kid and for her future and your future, they keep talking to you. But love remains this barrier that says to you, Erica, your parents don't know anything. Erica, yes, your parents are right. But if you talk to your husband or to your man, he'll sober up. He'll become better. There comes a point where your parents will eventually win. They'll keep hammering and hammering and hammering until there's a crack in the door. And then you come home, I'm there on the sofa with a bottle in hand, I'm drunk. And all of a sudden the whispers of your father comes in and the voice of your mother comes in. And then you begin to reflect, why am I doing this? I've been in this situation for the past 3 years. Do I really want to continue? Do I want to expose my kids? Now, this is the first time you've actually behaved this way, reflectively, because for the past 2, 3 years, you've been guided by love or emotions that blinds you. Now that your parents have kind of hammered things inside your skull, what you do is you have moments of reflection that combats the drunkenness of the emotion. Okay. Now you begin to think. Now you begin to study. And it's not going to be a comfortable feeling because you're going to say, maybe I should just pack up and leave. But you say, I've built this life with this man for the past 5 years. Do I want to leave? Maybe there is a way out. Maybe we can fix this relationship. Maybe I should just hold off. So you justify the dysfunction. And I say we justify because it has taken you 5 years to kind of cultivate certain habits. This is the man you've seen for the 5 years every single day. This is the life you've had. This is the bed you've shared. This is the movies we've watched. This is the stuff you cook in and you eat together. His voice, his smell, all that stuff. These are all habits that we create. And just because you have a moment of reflection where you say, I want to get out, that's not enough. You have to keep paying attention, keep observing. And the more you see, the less you will like. And then you just need to pray for a breaking point where something about you, and this, no one really knows how this happens. It's kind of like someone who's an alcoholic eventually says, I'm going to go to AA, And then there are relapses. And then say, I'm going to go to AA and just delete all of my contacts and make new friends. You have to deal with depression, with all that stuff, And then you take your daughter to your parents and she says, where is dad? That's another guilt, And you see her weeping in her bed late at night. And that's another sadness for you. And it's just too much. But you have to the promise you've made about yourself, about your kid's life, that you believe that the future holds more for you than what the present holds. And you're willing to sacrifice. You are able to put your emotions on the cross, nail them, bear them, make sure they never resurrect. Because you know that these emotions are going to intoxicate you for all the wrong reasons. So you need a good amount of detachment, mindfulness, awareness to be able to observe. Be okay with feeling bad. You're a 19-year-old kid. You have no right to promise anyone marriage or long-term relationship. You're just a kid, And in this culture, all of us, young farts, we try to play house. Wrong time, wrong people. So, yeah. Yeah, Markel.
So I think I have a question, but you said you're not gonna let anybody play soccer.
The what?
You said that you're not gonna let anybody allow you to suffer unless you love them.
Yeah.
What if it's something that's essential to your life, work, or pregnancy happening, something that you necessarily don't what is
Let me give you this awful analogy. Is that okay?
yeah.
Let's just say the first day you came to this class, you looked at me and you said, yuck. Okay? But you needed this class to graduate. This is the only class you need to get your bachelor's or master's or PhD. Okay? Or just leave Laney in Oakland. Well, you have a couple of options. You could drop the class, wait for another semester to come by, and hope that someone else besides me teaches this class. Or you could say, you know what? I'm going to walk to class, have my headphones on my head, and then once in a while go like this while listening to Snoop Dogg. Okay? And And just in case he asks me to remove my headphones, I'm going to like fantasize and daydream and doodle, whatever. So what you'll do is, you know that you need this class. You know that it's going to be a long 16-week semester, and you're willing to pay the consequences, that you're willing to suffer in order to get a passing grade so you can leave. While here, though, you will distract yourself the best you can. The less you pay me attention, the more comfortable you are. Rarely do you find people who have jobs that are very passionate about. And even if they may be passionate, they have to be like in their 20s. Once some age has passed, once you realize the value of time, you realize all the things you used to do and they used to give you passion and pleasure, they no longer are. Okay? You have to make money. You have to buy clothes, you have to buy food, you have to pay rent, you have to help out your parents. You may not like your older brother, but he's there whenever you go. What are you going to do? He's like 3 times your size, and he's mean. Just in case you look at him in a mean way, he'll just smack you. Well, you can't, have your own place. This just costs too much. So what are you going to do? You become a good politician. To survive life, really, and many branches of life are places of discomfort and disgust. You have to find the proper tools to survival, that's all. I was sitting and grading some essays a couple of days ago. Like AI-generated essays, 100%, 90%, 80%. And these are just stupid people. You want to use AI, that's fine. Just change words, change paragraphs. Do something. Don't be so stupid. I know you don't like the class, okay? You don't need to express your dislike for the class by generating an AI essay. Just dislike it in your own private way. Just write some crummy essay and, pass the class and go your way. The only people who are able to kind of be okay with suffering, rich people. Their house can burn down, like Los Angeles. They can cause tariffs, but because they have millions, if not billions of dollars, they say, oh, okay, so what if I lost $1 million or 2 or 3 or 4? Tesla's stock, everything about Tesla is down. What does he care? He's like $100 billion. I don't even know the sort of numbers that look like. When you get $100 billion, what do you care? If I cause you suffering in this class, for example, if you don't need this class, you can just flip me off and leave the room. Now that's power. If you don't like the relationship and you're okay with being alone, that's power. You can leave. If you've trained your taste buds not to demand exotic foods, bread, a little bit of cream cheese, that'll fine. So. Yeah.
We're not all those clothes like that.
The what?
Violence is not there.
Who said that? Wrong.
But yeah, I feel like there's always a time for diplomacy and talking, but when people continue to test you, then see diplomacy as like a way like, oh, you're not doing it.
So let me give you a couple of examples. One by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the French philosopher who had, I think, 25 or 30 or 40 kids and put them all in foster. Violence, he had argued, is the last tool of the oppressed. I think when Jesus says slap, if someone slaps you on the right, offer the left. It would have been nice if he was to live, a long life for us to see if someone like Mike Tyson was to slap him 100 times, if he would turn the 101 and 2 and 3, or maybe he would just fight back. Okay. What little I've read of the four Gospels, there were moments where he screamed and shouted and became really angry with the crowds. In fact, he destroyed the money shops by the temple. So that's the thing you need to understand, that first of all, by the time you get to the place of violence, rage expressed outwardly, that you have exercised a good amount of diplomacy, and you realize it just doesn't work. The next is a man we call Chief Seattle, Native American. One of the nice things about the natives, and it's something that the French jurist Alexis de Tocqueville had talked about when he came to America from France, and he came here mainly to study the prison system of the American system. And he came to realize that there are two groups of people who live in America that are profoundly decent. The black folks and the Native American folks. He said there is only one thing about these two groups of people that you need to be concerned. Don't ever piss them off. They are generous, they are kind, they are compassionate. They will do whatever they can for you. But if you betray them over and over and over again, they will make your life hell. Okay? So what we have of the Native American history is that when people from Europe came here to settle, they made all these promises. They signed all these treatises, and they broke them. They broke the promises. They didn't much care about the papers they signed. And one of them being Chief Seattle would say, let's try this again, over and over again. There came a point where he looked at these people and said, white man does not respect his words. White man does not know what promises mean. It seems that we have to pick up our bows and arrows and fight them. And what can you do with bows and arrows when your opponent has guns? So you need to understand that all of us in this class, we have no choice but to engage in diplomacy. I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship. It's going back to Mikai's question, which is whenever you're in a relationship, you engage in diplomacy. Okay? When you're like a toddler, you don't know what that means. You scream and you shout, and your parents kind of spank you a little bit, train you a little bit. By the time you get to like the age maybe 4 or 5, you say please, you say thank you. Okay? And just in case you can't, your parents will remind you. What's the magic word? Okay? And from a very young age, you learn how to be diplomatic in life. But then life keeps pushing and pushing and pushing. And all of us in this class have a different amount of capacity. You may have a gallon, I may have 5 gallons, she may have an ounce. Okay? And what happens when that capacity gets maxed out, you do diplomacy, but with a good amount of resentment, with a good amount of anger. Okay? You will wash dishes, okay, even though you've been washing them for the past 5 weeks, but while washing, you'll break a couple of plates because you don't want to slap your companion, so you'll just retaliate against the plates. There comes a point where just breaking plates is no longer enough. You begin to scream. And then when you realize they just are bullying you too much, then you fight them. There is a scene, I think it's on TikTok or one of those shorts on YouTube. Mike Tyson is on the plane, and there is someone behind him who keeps kicking his chair, and he gets jolted back and forth. And Mike Tyson, he's a 50-year-old man, and he is very different than the way he was in his, 18 and then 20, 30. He's mellowed, he's profoundly mature, very eloquent, very wise and reflective. So for the first 10, 15, 20 minutes, he would always stand up, turn around and say, can you please not do that? It bothers me and I'm trying to rest. And he comes to realize that this chap just doesn't understand. You know. And this is Mike Tyson. And he's always had a short fuse, but he's trained himself. If he was like a 10 amp breaker, now he's a 20 amp breaker. You know, then he gets to be a 50 amp breaker. So it takes a lot for this fuse to pop. And then at a certain point, he just kind of looks at this guy and just punches him. You know. I mean, consider all the protests that you see around the country. You know, so you tolerate the fact that your president can't really speak English eloquently. All the awful things that are happening, people are losing their jobs, their retirement, what little security there is in life, it's just being taken away. And I don't know if you know much about COVID, don't know if you know much about what happened in 2008. Once your finances fall apart, your marriage falls apart, your power over your kids fall apart, you fall apart, depression comes in, everything falls apart. And then you realize that this guy is creating a mess of this country. And then he's playing golf. I mean, there is nothing wrong with playing golf. At least do it in hiding where no one can see, where it's not reported. You can't just make people suffer and then sit there and just laugh at people, you know. And there comes a point where you say, you know what, it's just not enough for me to just sit home and drink this stuff away or smoke it away or just porn it away. I need to go in the streets. I went to visit my parents this weekend in Roseville. And I don't know if you know much about Roseville. It's mostly Republican. And there is nothing wrong with, you know, that particular bent. And the city is about 90% white. It's becoming a bit more diverse. It's very rich, very clean, nice, safe place to live in. There were 1,000 people out there, you know, a lot of old folks, you know, carrying banners saying, you know, I don't know what the hell you want to do with your own life, but my retirement, my mortgage, you know, my health care, hands off. You know, and these are like people, church-going people who are very passive for the most part. All of a sudden, they're very politically engaged. So, you ever seen that movie V for Vendetta? See, you haven't. Now, the nice thing about V for Vendetta or The Matrix, do you have children? You know, parents are, I can't tell you how patient parents are. I mean, the normal kind. Not the ones who get drunk all the time or smoke all the time or just have a very short fuse, temperamentally speaking. Parents are very, very, very patient. You know, can you please, like, clean your room, honey? Clean your room. It's my 4th time telling you, no dinner. And then there comes a point, you know, after like an hour of, you know, telling your kid and then hour of screaming, hour of threatening, that's like 3 hours. Then, you know, you're like red. You walk to your kid's room. You grab them. Pick them up. Throw them against the wall. Of course, your wall is made of feathers. And you jump on them. Just kidding. And, you know, you just spank. And so. There are many different kinds of violence, but the sort of violence that we are talking about has its roots in justice and fairness. You know, my thoughts are bring all these movie stars together, bring all these athletes together, bring all these billionaires together. Just have them each put a certain amount of money in the public domain. And I will assure you, every single person in America will walk away with at least $250,000. That's all. You don't have to cut people's jobs. You don't have to get rid of their health care. That's all you got to do. And I think if millionaires and billionaires see that other people are pitching in, they'll do it. They're more than generous. I don't want to give $1 million if Trump only wants to give 10,000. I mean, I don't know how much your parents pay in taxes, but the idea that someone like Trump or people like him only pay like 1,000, I mean, that's offensive. It causes you anger. And you say, look, I want to pay taxes. I make 50,000. I pay like 20,000 taxes. If the guy is making 100,000, or if the guy is making like 100 million or billion, they got to pay more, man. And then when you realize that no one listens to you, no one really cares, and you can only do civil disobedience for so long, then you say, you know what, fuck this. It's not worth it. My kids are going to suffer, my family is going to suffer. And then you do things that you never imagined yourself doing. Now that particular violence, liberation theology, it's a branch that came out of Christianity, where the nuns and the monks and decent Christians said, you know what, we're going to get some guns and we're going to fight the system. I'm not encouraging, promoting any of that, even though I'm not really encouraging, promoting any of that. I think it's bad. You should go to Toys R Us, water guns. Erica, Rosalind, Erica. Markel, do you have the time? The prophet that you are. What is it? Is it that time? You should never say it's that time. Yeah.
I don't want to try to do it.
Oh yeah, but you shouldn't say it like that. Do you have any other questions or comments before you leave? It's good to see all of you. See you Wednesday. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
You too. Thank you.